So last class I went over the stick animation stuff, how to get started in it. This is the sheet for it. So I will have this printed up and then put inside the booklet. So the gist of this is we're understanding the basics of mechanical animation using the stick rig. So we have to understand how do we rig it, and then how do we do all of that stuff. I forgot that one thing in here, which is to rig the thing. Rig stick. Okay. So you'll be rigging the stick. Obviously staying organized is going to be key. If you don't have your stuff organized correctly, things will just fall apart. And then you'll be setting keyframes, adjusting speed, animating the stick, wagging at some point. Think about those 12 principles of animation, right? So the stick doesn't just like start moving, it should like wind up and then start moving, okay? When it gets to its destination, it doesn't just stop, it like overshoots and then kind of comes back to where it was, okay? Use appropriate materials, lights, cameras, and motion blur. Those things are going to be universal across the board for all the assignments now. We really want to focus on being able to tell the story with that piece of animation. Your thumbnails we talked about before, kind of storyboarding out the kind of thing you want your item to do. I put it under thumbnails, maybe it should be under storyboard. There we go. You'll turn in your project folder. It says everything but not the rendered images. So I don't want all the individual images. Usually people accidentally turn that in. I just want your scene and your movie. Those are typically the two things that'll be inside that project folder. The movie should be about 5 to 7 seconds. It could be a little bit longer, but most of the time it's going to fall within that range. It's definitely not going to be shorter than 5 seconds. And then this should be at, I don't know why I keep putting 20 or 30. This should be at 24 frames per second, 960 by 540, same thing as the ball. Okay, and then it's worth 10 points. Okay, so pretty straightforward. At this point, it's just like we understand how to set keyframes, we understand how to use the graph editor. Now let's do something a little bit more advanced and see if we can get everything kind of flow together, okay? And the due date, September 21st. I don't anticipate it taking all this week and all next week to do. By the end of this week, you should have the animation part wrapped up, and then the rest of it is just animating or rendering stuff out, tweaking things. We did have a couple of things that I'm going to mention too that people had issues with, but it shouldn't take that long to finish the entire thing up. Okay, so if you want to stay, on target, I would recommend getting it finished by the end of this week, so that way next week when we start the character stuff, you're ready to go. Okay. A couple issues people had is that you're too free with how you name stuff. So if I were to call this my favorite file hashtag I'm awesome with that. Okay, this is an exaggeration, but any special characters in your name, Maya will not like, okay? Sometimes that can be spaces, so just having a space in there it doesn't like. Sometimes it could be a special character, a pound sign, a parenthesis, any of that stuff. So as you name your files, try to keep everything condensed into one name. So Sarcona, underscore, and then whatever this is. Okay, and that will go the same for when you're doing your render settings. This area up here is going to use the name of your render set, the name of your file. So I always like to name that something too in case I do multiple takes. Sarcona take 1, Sarcona take 2, whatever it is. Okay, that way as I'm rendering my stuff out, I know which version I'm going with, especially if I'm going to do a comparison. If I have multiple cameras, I'm going to cheat, and I'm just going to right-click here and say Insert Camera Name, okay? That way if I had 4 cameras, I don't have to make sure I go and rename that. It'll automatically name those files whatever the camera is called, okay? So just make your life a lot easier when you do stuff like that, okay? So that should be wrapping up the stick animation. Any questions on that stuff?